Hello guys, welcome to a new video of React. In today's video we are going to learn the basics of working with forms in React. We'll see how to capture input from form elements like input, Textarea or select tag and have the data available for form submission. So in regular HTML, the form elements like input, Textarea or select are responsible on their own to handle the user input and update the values. But what we want is React to control the form elements instead. So the form elements that are controlled by React are called control components. So let's consider an input element with type text. This input can have a value, and this value can be changed by an event on change. After that we have the state, that we have a property called username, which is equal to string empty, and we need a username change handler function that will set state and it will change the username inside the state. After that we are assigning the value to this.state.username. So the value of this input will equal to string empty first, and after that when the user is typing something it will trigger this onChange event and this function, this username change handler, and we are passing an event object, so we are getting the input that we type inside this input through event target value. So we are setting state, and the username property inside this state object will be what we actually typed inside the input here. So let's see this in the code. So first things first, we have a class component called control component. We have a constructor, we have the state object. We imported this component in app.js here, and now we can change it. So we have a form element. Inside it, let's make a class, a div with class name form element, and let's create a label, right, with username and an input type text. Now let's see how it looks. Okay, we have the input here. Now we need to add a property here inside the state, so we have username, which is string empty. Alright, and now let's assign the value of this input to this.state.username, which is string empty at the moment. We can destructure here, of course, const username equals to this.state. So now we use only the username here inside the value. Now if we take a look here, we are getting an error, and it's telling us that we need to use a non-change handler, and we cannot change here. Whatever we type here we cannot change without having a non-change handler, right? So let's add an onChange event here, this.username change handler, and now let's create this function, username change handler equals to, make an arrow function, and we have the event parameter here. It's a good pattern to always write functions like this, so we have the change handler, so you know what type of event it is and what are you changing. So we have, then we need to do a set state, right? And now let's change the username from inside the state with the event target value, what we wrote inside that input, and we can console log this also so we can see it. So we have here John, right? And the input value has been changed. So each time the set state is called, it will trigger a render, this render method, and it will update again the HTML with the value equals to this updated state that we changed with the setState, right? Okay, now let's make another one, another form element. The label, let's say details, right? We'll change this to a text area. So now we need to add here a new property, details equals to string empty, right? We will get this here. We will need to destructure it from the state. So this.state.details, and we'll assign it here to the value of the text area. We don't need this on this type text here, and it will have the onChange event equals to details change handler. Now we need to create again another function with details change handler that will be used in this text area to change the state and update the value inside it, right? And now we need to change here details, and here we can say text area event target value. Okay, so this is username and this is the text area. Now let's see how it works. So we have John here, it's updated, and we have details here. We can see each time we type something, it will console log the value and it will update the state and the value. Okay, now let's make a select. Okay, so we have here, let's say a pet. We can select some pets. So we have a select, right, with some options inside, with the value, let's say dog, and maybe two more, a cat, and I don't know, a turtle. And we can actually we need to add here a pet property inside the state, and let's set this to dog actually. So this value here, the pet, we will assign it to the select value. So we need to destructure it again, pet, right? We take this pet and we assign it to the value here. So this select will know that it will have the value pet, so it will have this option selected by default. And after that we need to an onChange event again, right? Let's create another one. So we have pet change handler, right? We get the event target value from that select and we update it with pet. So we take this pet change handler and we assign it here, this dot pet change handler. Now let's take a look. We have the username, details, and each time we select an options, we can see turtle, cat, dog. Okay, so now we have the payload, right? We have the data from the form. Now let's submit the data, right? So we will need to do a button, right? Button of type submit. And now if you take a look here, each time we press submit button, it will refresh the page, because it's a default behavior of the form elements to refresh the page. But we don't want that, right? So this button of type submit will actually trigger this form submission, and we can catch this event with onSubmit, right? So we have this onSubmit and let's say form submit handler. So we need to create this function, right? Each time we'll press submit, we'll get the values from the state and we can send them to database or something. So we need to create form submit handler equals to event arrow function, and now we can alert, for example, the values from the state, right? So we have this.state.username, this.state.details, and this.state.pet, the chosen pet, right? Okay, now we type here John, React developer, we select cat, and now if we press submit, we will see the actual values that we selected and we changed here. But we will see that we will lose the data because it's the default behavior, right? So it refreshes the page. So in order to avoid this, we will need to use the event prevent default on that object, on that event object, right? So we use event prevent default, and now if we type again, we will see the values here, and we'll keep the actual values inside our inputs and elements, right? We can do this with a button also, so we don't really need form on submit, right? We can do it with the button type submit, but if we use the type submit, it will help users if they use enter key, it will submit the actual form, so it's better for user experience. But if you don't want that, we can get rid of the form, right? And we can change this button, type button, and we will need to use on click on it. Each time we'll click on this button, we will trigger the form submit handler, and this form submit handler will take all the values that we changed on those controlled components, right? Okay, and now if we press submit, it's the same behavior, but we cannot press enter again, so to submit the data. And now we can construct the payload, for example, so const payload. So I have the username, this.state.username, details, this.state.details, and the selected pet, and we can console log it, right? And if I type again here, we will see the payload and we can send this to database. Of course, there are many other libraries that can help to do this, like form serialize or React hook forms, but I will talk about them in the next videos. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, we can talk on Discord, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.